Hi, I'm Anthony Newbold. Welcome to A Closer Look. We will continue a conversation we had last week with the Minister of National Security, the Honorable Marvin Dames, talking about crime. Minister, welcome to the show again.
It's a pleasure to be back, Mr. Newbold.
Thank you very much. Talking about initiatives to deal with crime and what the police are doing, training, et cetera, human resources. What else do you do to get the citizenry involved? Because you got to get them involved, and you admit that.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's a neighborhood watch council, it's called. Tell me what's happening with that.
Yeah, you know, this is something, Mr. Newbold, that I'm extremely excited about. The National Neighborhood Watch Council. This was one of those policy initiatives that was proposed by our government, and it's going extremely well. To date, we have maybe in excess of 90 groups throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Most of them are here in New Providence. There are a few in Grand Bahama, as well as Abaco. We have been doing a tremendous amount of work to ensure that our police force build or improve its relations with the various communities throughout the country, and they have been doing just that because we now have community liaison officers who are connected to these neighborhood watch groups. And it was just not the formation of groups. This was not something that just was arbitrarily done. We actually sat down and did some research. We have manuals that clearly articulate how these groups ought to function. We have engaged any number of persons from within the groups themselves to serve as co-chairs, and they've been doing a tremendous job. And we're now looking at traveling to Palm Springs, California very shortly to meet with the various groups throughout the U.S. But we're trailblazing here because there are a number of things that we're doing that will be unique to a neighborhood watch groups, and I'm extremely proud of those persons who have decided to be a part of it.
It is part of the Citizens Security. There's a program.
Yeah, that's another government initiative, and it's a Citizen Security and Justice Program.
Yes.
And that program falls under the auspices of the Ministry of National Security, and it's a very vibrant program. Since coming into office, we were faced actually with the challenge of having to restructure it and to rebuild it, and because they manage a loan from IDB in excess of $30 million, and there are 4 components to it. You know, one of those components are having to do with the justice system and working with the courts and developing a proper IT system that will allow for interface between the various stakeholders. The other is the work that they're currently doing within the Bahamas Department of Corrections, where we now have a significant amount of training, physical improvements of the facility itself, as well as the introduction of technology.
All right, it's all part of the Citizen Security and Justice Program.
Citizen Security and Justice Program.
We're going to get to the prison in a minute. We try to get so much of this stuff in here.
Yeah.
The police is only as effective as its relationship with the citizenry.
Yes.
You got to get the people to trust you.
Absolutely.
Who you're sworn to serve. There have been some allegations recently about police misbehaving, police brutality, quite frankly. What could you tell the public to allay their concerns that this is not something that is out of control?
Yeah, that this is something that is unacceptable, and this is something that this government certainly will not condone. I've had numerous conversations with the commissioner himself, and he and his leadership have taken a zero-tolerance approach to any allegations around police brutality. as a government, what we are embarking upon is something that is certainly new to this country, maybe even new to the region, where we are bringing about a greater level of transparency. We have now out, as a matter of fact, Cabinet had approved the RFP for body cams for our police officers. Somewhere this first tranche or this first phase would be somewhere in the area of about $2 million. We are out to acquire some 200 body cam. We have gotten all of the information back now and should have a paper go into Cabinet for approval of the vendor in maybe the next 2 weeks.
All officers on patrol gonna wear these.
Frontline officers will be wearing body cams, and we're hoping to introduce, certainly during the next fiscal period, cams as well, dash cams for vehicles. And this is all in an effort for us as a government to bring about that level of transparency that is needed. In addition to that, we're also looking at ways to improve the complete investigative process, meaning that how can we bring about a greater level of independency? Right now, you have the police who's actually investigating the police. We have the establishment of a board who will review complaints from time to time and has the authority to do that.
This board is established, will be established?
Yeah, well, there is legislation out there, and we have a new board in train, and I should be going to Cabinet with that. We have the paper prepared within the next 2 weeks or so. But in addition to that, we're looking at other means to bring about a greater level of independence, so the public will feel confident that the matters are being investigated with less police control over the investigations.
I imagine that an effective prison system must factor into your efforts. We got to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk some more about what you're doing with the prison. And we'll be back with more on A Closer Look with the Minister of National Security after this. Welcome back to A Closer Look. Anthony Newbold speaking with the Minister of National Security, the Honorable Marvin Dames. Minister, an effective prison system must complement what the police does. You about to name a new commissioner, I understand.
Oh, yes. We have completed the process and should be naming the next commissioner very shortly. And that will go hand in hand with our efforts to restructure and to retool the Bahamas Department of Corrections. Currently,
the name has changed.
Yes.
Have the attitudes changed?
Well, it's going to take more than that. And as I said to you in the previous segment, that it's all about working on the human resource component. And right now we have a new commissioner. We're now working on a new executive team. And I'm hoping that that new executive team will set the stage for the future development of that agency, which is so critical. But we have to start investing in people. We're now working with Corrections Canada. I've just signed an agreement with them to continue working with them to develop our human resource component. We're working through citizen security under Component 4 to develop and improve our human resource capabilities. So there's a lot of work that we're doing in that regard. We're also looking at how we can improve the physical environment. Our government would have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars under this fiscal period, and we're still doing so, to improve the physical environment of that department. Since coming into office, they had an administrative office with a leaking roof. I mean, it was major, and it's gonna cost us maybe somewhere in the area about $400,000 to repair it. We have a company actually working to do that now. We're trying to improve the maximum security area. And we're working with our partners now as we do the research to determine what additional physical space will be needed to help us move towards rehabilitation.
Because I was going to ask you, is a new prison anywhere in this country's future?
Well, definitely new construction is foreshadowed. We're currently reviewing that. But we just don't want to just build a structure, and that is the problem. We're moving away from penal, more rehabilitation, right? Mm-hmm. And so we have to ensure that that structure is able to meet the needs of this change in environment that we have embarked upon. And so construction is in the foreseeable future. But also, we have to look at ways to where we can reduce the level of the number of persons in that facility. There are some persons, and we have to look at how we amend our laws, how we sentence, because, you know, we send people to jail for almost any and everything. And I think that is something that, as a government, we're looking to alleviate the stress on that facility, but more importantly, the burden on the Bahamian people in terms of cost.
The idea is to have more efforts at rehabilitation to see if this kind of gentler approach would work. Of course, people would say, you need to be punished, put them on the chain gang. You don't do that anymore, do you?
No, I mean, it's you know, we're at a place, Mr. Newbold, where we have to, it's all about investing in people. You know, if someone makes a mistake, you have to give them an opportunity to change them. A study was done by the University of the Bahamas in conjunction with Bahamas Department of Corrections, as well as Citizen Security and Justice. And they looked at these inmates, and many of them are very disadvantaged. They go into this facility, can't read and write, don't have a trade, right? Didn't have a job, from broken homes, and so, you know, they have been neglected somewhere along the way. Not saying that all of them can change. The vast majority of them, I contend, will. And there's studies out there that have proven that. And so now we're obligated, and we have been doing so. I mean, we just graduated from BTVI last year, at the end of last year, well over 100 inmates who have been trained in mechanical, IT, barbering, and all the various trades. And they haven't, I mean, we did not just design a program for them. They now have a legitimate BTVI document that they can take at the end of their time and go out and compete for a job. And we have been working to get jobs with them. You recall we had Ministry of Labor in, and we had labor on the blocks within the institution. So there's a clear demonstration that this government, our government, is totally committed towards the rehabilitation of our young men and women incarcerated at the Bahamas Department of Corrections.
Talking about the police and allegations of police brutality, you have some challenges with corrections officers and contraband.
Yeah, that's a problem, and we have been working to correct that. This is a zero tolerance approach, but again, it goes back to and I contend, and this is why we have taken this approach, that we have to do a better job at recruitment. Too often, and you know, I've had persons since when we first came to office coming to me and say, well, they said go to your MP. I said, no, that's a thing of the past. Yeah. You don't go to the MP. You go and earn your place in this. If you want to become a corrections officer, you go and earn your place. If you want to become a defense force officer, same thing. Or police officer, same thing. We're looking for the brightest and the best and the most committed, the most loyal, and that's all we're looking for.
We're going to talk about your next area of your portfolio, the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. But we got to take this final break. And we'll be back with more with the Minister of National Security on a closer look after this. Welcome back to A Closer Look. Anthony Newbold speaking with the Minister of National Security. Let's talk some about the Defense Force. Going through some of the same changes and adjustments as the police force.
Yes.
Same objective?
Yes, we are currently working to complete a manpower audit of that agency. As you know, they're going through a phase of decentralization as well. And so we're rather late on that audit because their decentralization started some years ago. But very little was taken into consideration in respect to, what are going to be the real needs of that agency as you decentralize? Because now you're thinking of putting men and women in the southern Bahamas, in the central and the northern Bahamas. And so it's okay to focus on building physical structure. But at the end of the day, you're going to need individuals and officers to be placed in those areas to ensure that they're able to respond to the challenges in those respective areas.
I'm particularly interested, public, I would believe, in the southern border.
Right.
What are you going to do down there? People have talked about having a detention center down there. Something.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
That's our primary focus right now. And the government of the Bahamas is committed, and you will see that certainly during the upcoming fiscal period, because we have already had some preliminary discussions. I've had with the Commodore as well as our leader, the Prime Minister, on ensuring that we focus and concentrate on the Southern Bahamas first and foremost. There are some things that are currently being done. I would have mentioned some contracts that were signed recently to repair the current facilities, especially on the Inagua, that the officers have been having to endure for years, these substandard living conditions. And so we're working to fix those and get those right. But we will start the major constructions during this upcoming fiscal period. But in terms of technology, we should be launching very shortly, or having commissioning some technology in the Southern Bahamas that will allow for us to better be able to identify those persons who are conducting illegal activities. We're also working to get our drones program in place too in the Southern Bahamas. The Defense Force, as a matter of fact, would have completed their command center here in New Providence. That will give them tremendous reach now, reach by sight, reach by communications, to be able to communicate with their vessels, to communicate with their bases, and actually to see from a visual standpoint what's happening out there. And so we have a very structured approach to dealing with the challenges that we're facing throughout the Bahamas, starting with the Southern Bahamas.
Yeah, because people talk about things like they're not quite satisfied with the way the illegal immigrant situation is handled. And the fact that boats sail up the archipelago and end up in Abaco and wherever else they end up.
Yeah, it's a real challenge. The Defense Force, however, ought to be commended. And as you would know, for the first quarter of this year, starting in January, they had any number of significant interdiction. And a lot of this is being driven by intelligence. Ours is a very vast, expansive border. The Bahamas is an archipelago stretch over some 100,000 square miles of sea. That's not easy, especially when people know where you're going to be most of the time and how you're going to travel. So you're going to almost have to predict how they're moving. And we have been able to, through our analysis and through our technology, to be able to track the movements. And you can see the shift in in trafficking patterns from time to time, because they know that our initiatives and our strategies are reaping results. And so now we have to, as we strategize, almost predict when the next move is going to be or how it's going to be, so that we can counter what these traffickers are doing.
Let me ask you, you talked earlier about drones, and everybody says, why doesn't the Defense Force have drones? How effective has the Sandy Bottom project been? Well, that's where you got all those chips in the boats right. that people complain about as well.
Yeah. Since coming into office, and I would have intimated in Parliament, especially during the first year, any number of issues and challenges having to do with the Sandy Bottom project since taking over. Mm-hmm. It could have. I think that there was some errors made, and say for example, we invested $230 million in crafts. All right, and we did not take into consideration, for example, those craft, when they go to the Southern Bahamas, those big boats in particular, they run out of fuel. They have to come to Nassau.
Yeah.
Okay? So I think the planning around Sandy Bottom, it's an excellent idea. I think the concept is that we have to protect the entire Bahamas.
Yeah.
Okay? How we protect it is very important. Okay, you can say, I'll take $230 million and throw it at it. But now, you have to plan. When you plan, planning is very important. So now every boat that goes south, runs low, have to come back to Nassau. Okay? So, but our vessels at the Defense Force Base, for example, there were no plans for electrification to ensure that the base are connected to shore power. So that means now that we spend, on average, and we've been doing so for a long time, almost $10,000 a month for fuel to run generators to keep those boats going. And so the wear and tear on those vessels is significant. Yeah. Our government now is working to resolve all of those issues. We all agree that we need to protect our country. I just think that the manner and the approach that was taken initially leaves a lot to be desired, but that's water under the bridges behind us. We're now working to correct all of those issues and bring things in order to ensure that we're able to respond to the challenges in a meaningful way, that our officers and Marines are safe and that they're secured and they're pleased with the environment in which they're working, and they're able to execute. And so we're seeing that last year, I noted at the Defense Force Service that last year was arguably one of the most productive years in the history of that agency. And I assure you that this year would be even more productive.
And you say that in terms of what?
I said it.
Apprehension of approaches?
That's right. And say that in terms of apprehensions. Mm-hmm. And they're doing a lot of that. Their intelligence gathering capacity. All right, and the development of the officers within that agency, and so we're working to bring about, and to create a very, very effective and responsive agency, because at the end of the day, that goes well for the protection of our sovereignty.
I know we need another show, but as we wrap this up, I ask you the same question I asked you about the police. You have enough Marines? And if not, what are you doing about it?
Well, we're completing, working on that manpower audit now. We're working towards completing that manpower audit because we need to now think in terms of the entire Bahamas. And this is, this is very, running the Defense Force is a very expensive undertaking. When you talk about the assets, those vessels and the expense just to keep them at sea, when you're talking about the presence of these officers and Marines, especially in the Southern Bahamas, just to keep them there and providing supplies and food and medical facilities and so forth. And you have to do the same also for the northern Bahamas. So it will be a very interesting audit. They will definitely need more resources in terms of manpower. And currently they have 120 officers in training now. Last year, they passed out 120, the largest in the history of the agency, and so we backed it up again as a government with another 120. Same thing we're doing for the police force. They had 135 last year. They have 135 going in this year. So this government is serious about protecting the people of this country, and we're demonstrating that through our investment in these agencies, and we'll continue to do so.
Thank you very much, Minister.
My pleasure.
And thank you for watching A Closer Look. We're going to be gone for a couple weeks, and then you're going to hear from the Prime Minister, and then we'll be back with some more information and another minister on A Closer Look.